What is it like being a Jamaican in Sierra Leone? Hi, I'm Xavier Murphy, founder of Jamaicans.com. And today in Jamaicans to the World, I speak to Charles Mark Fi Smart, a Jamaican who has lived in Sierra Leone and has gone back and forth for a bit. Charles, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Xavier. Happy to be here and talk about something that's passionate. I'm passionate about. So yeah,
All right, so let's start at the top. Which part of Jamaica you're from?
Country Bush, Country Bush Spirit Tree Grove. It's in St. Mary, a small community. It's close to a place called Richmond Hill and Guys Hill. It's on the border of St. Mary and St. Catherine, but that's home. And then I spent my latter years before I moved to the States in Kingston in Havendale. So
Okay.
when I left Jamaica, I went to JC. I'm a true blue. Just like you said. So I left Jamaica.
You're ahead of me. You're
Huh?
ahead of me with the true blue, but
Yeah, I'm a true blue
representing.
man. Yeah.
So back up to St. Mary now.
Mhm.
Do you know Sandside, St. Mary?
I don't know. I don't know Sunside.
Okay, that's where my dad's from. He's from Sandside, St. Mary.
Okay, is that close to the St. Anne side or the St. Catherine side?
And not up, it's close to Another Bay,
Okay,
and yeah, closer to that side. So I guess we'd say
St.
closer to St. Anne
Yeah,
if we really want to, St. Thomas, St. Anne, yeah,
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 St.
closer
Anne.
to
Yeah,
that side.
yeah.
You know, so fun memories of my St. Mary country summers.
Got you. Yes, yes. Life, nice.
So first, before we jump in, I mean, I could, yeah, the background, love the background. Tell us a little bit about the background. And by the way, folks, I didn't even properly introduce this man, but we'll dive into some of it. An artist, an entrepreneur, someone who is into AI, someone, you name it. Plus was a big time athlete.
Yeah.
Probably representing the college that not only Jamaica College, but when you migrated, so there's so much, and hopefully we can touch on a few of those things, but let's start with the art. Let's start with the background that you have here.
Got you. No problem, man. So this in Sierra Leone in August 2017, there was a mudslide, a landslide, that really affected a lot of people. A lot of people died, and thousands of people were displaced by it. And at the time, it was quite interesting. Actually, I celebrated my 40th birthday, and I just climbed Kilimanjaro. And when I came off, and I finally got connection. I saw my WhatsApp blowing up with all of these different images and text messages, people checking on me to find out if I was there. And I realized that there was this massive landslide there. So when I came back, what I did in between is I made this this GoFundMe to raise money to help the community that was affected by it. And then I came back and I did this painting. That is the name of the painting is called Sorrow of Kalingo, which is the community that was affected by the landslide significantly. And so we raised, I think, about $12,000 or something like that, and distributed a bunch of, goods to the people. But this image was the image that really was spread all over the world. It was also the image that we used for the GoFundMe to raise money for that effort. So it's one of the pieces that I did, and I still have the piece. Just a regular plug. If somebody wants to buy the piece, they can, and all the proceeds from the piece will go towards impacting people in that community in Sierra Leone as well.
Where are your pieces? Where can people find them?
Great question. So you can find them on mark5creations.com. So and you can find out information about contacting me, and of course also purchasing it online.
Yeah, and I know you have some other amazing pieces that I've seen, that will, if you're into art, just great stuff, great paintings. All
I
right,
appreciate that.
went forward. So let's go
Back up now.
as I said. rewind and come again.
Yeah.
So tell us about, and I know you're back and forth between the United States, Jamaica, Sierra Leone, and so you're not there now, but you were there back up until about 2019, I think, when you and I spoke, and you've been visiting, and again, you have interest there and things you do there. But tell
Correct.
us about the first, what led you to Sierra Leone? Tell us that story.
That started long before I was born. And the reason I say it like that is my father is Sierra Leonean. And
Okay.
my mom met my dad when she was living in England. And so my father was a diplomat and a politician in Sierra Leone. His name is Alfred Kumbu Smart. And I met him a few times. I think he came up. I used to visit the States with him, and I didn't really build a relationship with him until about 2005, which is later in life. And I went to Sierra Leone the first time in 2005, when I found out that he was really sick, and he was basically about to die. He had cancer, and that was my first trip to Sierra Leone to reconnect. And so that was how I reconnected with Sierra Leone, and met the other side and really got to know the other side of my family, my brothers and sisters who are there, my stepmom.
Okay.
And so that was how I got introduced. And so unfortunately, a few months later, my father passed away. But
Hmm.
that reconnection to my heritage had a transformative impact on my life.
So tell us a little bit what it was like. You get to Sierra Leone, you're meeting new family, and
Hmm.
there's this other history, family history that's different from your Jamaican. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, my history in Sierra Leone started a long time ago. My great great grandfather in Sierra Leone is a national hero, similar to what we call, like our, Sam Sharp in Jamaica. His
Wow.
name is Gombu Coco, Gombu Coco Smart, and I put the most Sierra Leoneans know him as just Gombu Smart, but his original name was Coco, and he basically tricked the English and was able to establish his own region in Sierra Leone. And that's actually how he got the name Smart, because his name before was Gombu. Interesting story. If you look him up online, there's tons of history books written about him. But that's my great great grandfather. And so my father, is a descendant of that. And that's how that they got involved in leadership and politics. And so the Smart family in Sierra Leone are descendants of Gumbu Smart, which have been involved in leadership and politics for a very long time.
So
So,
if I go to Sierra Leone, I will say, listen, my good friend. Maybe it will open some doors. Again, as you said before, the Jamaica, Jamaica's, yeah, you're
right.
Jamaican, but this is some great information here. You know,
Yeah. And so
how do
it's
people
literally the
react
only
to it?
reason I was able to succeed there. One of the reasons that because I talk about legacy a lot and how important legacy is, but understanding my legacy in Sierra Leone has shifted my whole world and life. And it wasn't until I connected with my father going back in 2005 before he passed away, I really understood like who I was, where I came from, and it made me start thinking about, boy, if I come from this rich heritage and history, what am I going to do with my life, and what do I leave behind? So that's helped to shape a lot of who I am, since then. And of course, those doors that opened up for me was because of the work and things that my father did, not even the work that I did. I'd go to people and talk to them about something, and I'd mention who I was, and I'd have to say my name, and like, Kumbus Papikin. And I was like, yeah. And then because of that, they're like, okay, because of that, it just kind of opens the door. And and it has nothing to do with anything that I did, but the work that he did before me.
So it's interesting. When you have a legacy, how far back can your family in Sierra Leone trace their history, or and I know probably a lot of it is made oral.
Mm-hmm. So documented, you can go back for as far back I think as the 1600s, and I can share. There's a book, 50 Greatest Men of Sierra Leone, and he's in it. And there are also historians from Sierra Leone who've written extensively about his legacy and the families that came after him.
Wow.
So I think it goes back to like the six. So I can trace my history back on my father's side, documented by historians and different people who've written about him. I think back to like the late 1600s.
That's amazing because a lot of us, again, can't. And
Right.
so this is that
Yes.
that gives you probably such a feeling of identity,
Yes.
and empowers you.
Yes. And is one of the reasons why the Jamaica Heroes Project is so important to me, because it ties back to understanding that legacy and seeing how it shaped me. I know it was only because I learned about my history. So learn about my history changed my perspective, which I feel like it can also change others if they start looking back. People say like it gone already, done already, it happened already. Why you weren't worried about it? But if you understand it, it has an impact on you.
Oh, definitely. And folks, if you don't know, as I said, many hats. Charles has many hats. He has a project called Modernizing the Jamaican National Heroes, which again he mentioned his website. Check it out because
Mhm.
it's great, great stuff in terms of what he's doing, bringing it to a new generation is
Yeah.
part of the goal.
Yeah.
So
Right.
amazing stuff, amazing stuff.
Yeah. And so in
Mm.
2009, an opportunity, I kept in touch over the years, and a business opportunity presented itself to go over there and do mining. And I moved there in 2009 to start a business, and was there until the Ebola, right shortly after the Ebola outbreak in 2014 and 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about you kind of went into it a little bit, but tell us about the people of Sierra Leone.
Man, so the people are warm and welcoming. One of the things I feel just as much Sierra Leonean as I do Jamaican. I feel so much more after a while, after even living there. The people really welcome are very welcoming. They
Okay.
are they're happy-go-lucky people. They're poor. A lot of the people are poor. They're the haves and the have-nots. It's not really a very big middle class, and a lot of people, are all in one area. They're in Freetown, which is the capital. But the people in general are very friendly. And the place is very safe. And
Mm.
contrary to Blood Diamonds and what you may have watched and think about Sierra Leone being a violent place, that was circumstantial, having to do with a war that they really didn't have anything to do with, spillover from what was happening in Liberia. But the people are great, and you feel welcome. There are a lot of people that I met when I was living there, just to give a testament to that, who kind of went to say, okay, I'm going to visit for a month. And then you ask them how long they've been there, and they're like, yeah, it's been 5 years. So you find, and that's from, you name it, regardless of where those individuals are from the diaspora, or expats or NGOs who've gone there to work. People love
Wow.
it. Yeah.
So when you tell folks there, I'm Jamaican, what is the typical response?
Oh, Jamaica, yo! So I was walking in Freetown. Um, it was a February, and it was February 6th. And I didn't recognize it as anything. I didn't think about it. And I'm a huge Jamaican and Bob Marley fan. But everywhere we go, I hear Bob Marley music, and I'm wondering why I'm playing Bob Marley music everywhere I go today. And I asked somebody, and they were like, "Oh, it's Bob Marley's birthday today." And just this kind of give a connection to, they love Jamaica and they love Jamaicans, and so because of that, they kind of see as a kind of a extension of a brother to them, as well. But another part of that is, in the more rural areas, one of the things that I had to learn about being in Sierra Leone and Africa in general was that black doesn't mean that you're black. And so in the rural areas, they used to call me Putu, or Putu. And just kind of understanding the history of Sierra Leone, they were first colonized by the Portuguese. And
Mm.
so the name that they gave the Portuguese was Putu, which was standard what they call white man. It's for like a white man. So literally, they used to call me Puto. Because like the kids would see you driving the car and they shout out Puto. And so Puto literally means white man. And so one of the things that I had to really understand is that being black alone isn't just about in their eyes, because everybody around them for the most part is black, but your cultural identity really has a lot to do with how they view you and accept you and look at you, right? So even though you might be black as them, there might be a Lebanese guy who lives there and is look like a white man, but he's more Sierra Leonean and accepted more probably as a Sierra Leonean than you, who probably is a foreigner coming there. Even though there's disparity. So, just interesting things that I learned, but the people are very welcoming, and, you feel very welcome there. You feel very safe, and people are kind.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the Bob Marley, because recently I was talking to a young lady, right, in her 20s from Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to me, we may love Bob Marley more than you love Bob Marley in Jamaica. And
Right.
literally, she said, yeah,
Yeah.
and she says, I'm 20 something, but
Mm.
Bob Marley is just loved
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
in
I
Zimbabwe.
mean, being Jamaican is a passport. I mean, I tell people, I literally, when I travel, and I've been to a lot of different places, um, when I travel and people ask me where I'm from,
Right.
a lot of times, even though I live in the States, a lot of times, or, I was living here,
Right.
I'll tell them straight up, like, I'm Jamaican, just off rip. And it just changes, or where you from? I'm from Jamaica. It gives you a different reception. People just look at you and feel differently because, our culture is just so powerful and strong, man. So,
Automatic. I've heard so many stories during this series. People getting free food. One lady,
yeah,
I don't know if
man.
you know this, her husband is from the country, Mexican. She's not. She's
Mhm.
Jamaican. She goes in. They serve food. Her food is free. Her Mexican husband is not.
That's real. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Being Jamaican is a passport. It's a walking passport. Culture is just so powerful. Yeah, man. I'm
so
serious. I'm serious.
I'm gonna jump a little bit from. I'm gonna jump from food to. I mean, from people to
Hmm.
food.
Yes.
Tell us about the food in Sierra Leone, and if there is two foods you could recommend
Hmm.
that you'd say you gotta try
Oh
this.
man. So, all right. You guys have probably heard of fufu before, right? It's cassava, pounded cassava,
Yeah.
and they eat it with like okra cooked up with palm oil. So palm oil is a big part of their diet, right? This red oil that's pounded from palm nut, and so there are a lot of people cook with that. So some of the things that they have is what they call rice is staple. So you'll talk to a Sierra Leonean, and if a Sierra Leonean doesn't eat rice for the day, he'll tell you that he hasn't eaten. You'll see him eating a sandwich. You'll see him
So you're,
eating,
so you're right
some
at home.
chicken.
You're right at home
Right
because
at home. You're
you're
right
right
at
at
home.
home because rice
Exactly.
rice is a staple for us.
Every day, morning, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's the Sierra Leoneans' meal. And so they eat it with what they call plasas. And plasas is like a sauce, so cooked up with greens, different greens. So they have what cassava leaves and potato leaves, and my favorite is crane crane. This one is kind of runny, like
Wait. Them expressions almost sound like some Jamaican expression.
yeah,
Kring kring,
okay, yeah, but
patu, patu,
and
all of these things almost sound like some Jamaican terms. And I'm sorry,
yes,
I interrupted you on the food. I'm so sorry.
no problem, man. We're talking. So the but the food is great. I love the food. I miss it because it's hard to find some of the greens that they have here that they cut up and they cook, and
Right.
they love pepper, so they cook with a lot of pepper. And so what they'll do is either have these little like things that they pound, like garlic and yabas is onion, and pepper, and and
So
then
give me the two. You
So
you're
my
I
two
see not
favorites, I would
watering.
say, man. If I
You're
have
not
to give,
watering, but you still have,
yeah,
you're
crank.
thinking of
It's
all
gonna
the
be
different food.
easy. It's easy. Number one is crank crank. I
Okay,
love crank crank and rice.
all
Um,
right.
and then I would say the other one is probably like a peanut stew that they make. That's like grounded peanut, and they'll cook it down um with meat, like chicken or fish or something like that. But and of course served with rice, and I love my plantain. So, so very similar in terms of the cuisine, and the food is tasty there, man.
Well, we talk about language, and I don't know, if there's any relation, but when you mention crane, and when you mention certain things, it's almost like, wow, have you found, any of the our language there? Have you found terms there that you can, go ahead, I'm
Yeah,
here.
man. So one of the things, so patois, and they speak Creole there, Krio, right? And Creole is like a mixture of English, um, Caribbean influenced English from the slaves that were brought there from Jamaica as well, because there were 500 and something slaves that were brought over to Sierra Leone to settle there from Jamaica, the Maroons, in the early 1800s. And then, so they talk Creole, and it, and of course, also has an influence of French with it as well, in the Portuguese. So, but it sounds like patois. Some of it sound like patois, but the accent is different. Um, so some
Mm,
of the words that we use, like a good one would be like, we say picnic, right? Right, and they say pikin. We saw you picking day. Saw you picking day. So that's like if I say that to you, like we saw you picking day, you
yeah,
understand what I'm
I
saying. Then
understand fully what you said.
where where
You
the at.
saw my children over there.
Exactly. So I one of the things, when I got there, I didn't speak the language, and I would speak it in this broken Jamaican American accent that they used to laugh at me. But I was determined, boy. I said, I got to learn to talk this language because it was, relatively easy, and I understood it. So, and it's not hard to pick up, but it's Creole, and it sounds a lot like patois in some of the words,
Right,
but a
right,
Jamaican could understand it, or someone who speaks broken English.
right.
And also the so
And
they
I'm going
also
to stop you. Remember, it's not broken. It's
no. Correct. Thank you very much. The programming, trying to
yes,
deprogram
yes,
the programming.
yes.
But there's also indigenous tribes, right? So they have Sierra Leone is also very tribal. So you have different tribes in different regions, and they all have their own language. So even though most people speak Creole, and understand Creole, each of the tribes have their own language that they speak as well.
Okay. I wanted to touch on you touched on earlier about the 500 enslaved or well freed enslaved
Mhm.
people that were there. I think part of it, and you probably could tell us a little bit about this because you probably have met descendants while you're there, and
Mhm.
you have probably encountered some of the oral history because
Mhm.
sometimes what we learn from the book or whatever is not there. I
Mhm.
remember some were sent to Canada, and then they
Mhm.
were supposed to be shipped from Canada to Sierra Leone. Some
Right.
stayed in, so tell us a little bit about that experience, about that connection, about what you have learned, and some of the
Mm.
descendants you have spoken to about that. And also, folks, listen, this man has he spoke about maroons. He has a project and this is a sidetrack, a project on the heroes of Jamaica, which is amazing, which is another story within itself. You mentioned the maroons and it came to mind,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
let's focus on this one.
Yeah. No
Tell us
problem.
about the that experience, the history that you know about, some of the oral history you have learned from speaking to descendants there.
Yeah. So ultimately, what it is, 550 Maroons in the late after the Second Maroon War were taken to Nova Scotia, and they couldn't deal with the conditions. And about a year later or so, they were then sent to Freetown, which was a colony that was established for recaptured slaves after the English abolished slavery, and they were settled there. And so the Maroons, they're were the ones that really became a part of what you call the Creole tribe. It's not really a tribe, but it's a community, right, in Sierra Leone. And that Creole community is very much you see different aspects of Jamaica even within them. So, for example, architecturally, when you go to the regions where they have their homes, you see the architecture very similar to how we have architecture with the verandas, the gardens in the front of the house. And what I was able to learn about, there's a particular community there called York. It's on the peninsula of outside of Freetown, where you have a large community of the descendants that were brought from Jamaica, where those individuals are the descendants of that community. And I spent some time with them and really learned about, how they look at things. And they have a lot of history also there about how the slave trade happened. And there's actually a cave that I went inside of where they used to keep the slaves. It's like a mile long. And it's like right against the ocean. So there's a cave and the ocean is right there. When you walk inside of it, Xavier, literally when you walk in the place, you feel it. Like I cried the moment I walk, because you just feel, that something happened here. Even the people that are there don't even really go into the cave.
I had the same feeling when I went to Ghana. I cried. Yeah. I hadn't cried in years. I cried. The tears just
they just come.
It just comes, and you get to the point of no return when you look out that window and you're like, this is where my ancestors. It's a feeling.
Yeah, it's chilling. It's chilling.
Yeah, and it's something that you'll never forget.
You'll never forget it. So that was my experience with that. But the people there, what you see, you don't hear much about the connection about their ancestors, because one of the things that happened is even though there were all of these individuals that were brought back, there was a mixture, because that community was not just made up of the 550 Maroons, but it was also people that were expatriated from England, but from the Americas, and slaves that were being brought over illegally after the abolition of slavery. And they were recaptured from different parts of Africa. And then they were being brought back to Sierra Leone and settled there. So the community, you don't really hear this specific story about Jamaica and the connection there. They're aware of it, but it's because it's commingled with the history of all these other groups of individuals that were part of that community that make up the Creoles. It's a bit, you don't get that specific history, but you see it in the architecture, you see it in the way they do things. That community is also a majority Christian. Sierra Leone is 3/4 of the country is Muslim. And then, of course, you have indigenous tribes. But the community that is Christian predominantly are the Creoles, right? Because of the colonial influence on them. And then continuing that as time went on.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what's the main language? I know we have Creole. What's the other language?
So the other languages that you have are mainly tribal. So they're like, I would say, there are a bunch of different tribes. I don't even remember all of them. But the Timnis, which speak Timni, and the Mendes are the two dominant tribes. And I said the Limbas. And they are geographically kind of concentrated as well. So the Timnis are in the north. The Mendes, for the most part, are in the south. And then the Limbas and the Krankos and some of the other tribes are in the central part. And then closer to the border, to Guinea's border, you have the Susus, which speak Susu, which is the language that they speak predominantly in Guinea.
No, all of this is sounding so. The terms, even somebody a tribe named Susus, it's so Jamaican.
Yes, that's like Susu, like a Susu mean.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
it's sounding
Yeah.
so Jamaican, and it sounds like as you know what you described is a patchwork because we have heard, you know, when slaves were caught at sea after abolition, they were
Hmm.
taken back. Some weren't taken back to where they came from, and they
No,
were
right.
taken to different places. I mean,
Right.
very, you know, there's so much to unpack, but I don't think we can do it
No, we
in
don't have the
this.
time for that today for
But
sure.
it's just such an amazing history
Yes.
and just so much. So I'm gonna move on and talk a
Okay.
little bit about music.
Mm-hmm.
What is the music you hear there? And you know, do they have their own? Are you hearing reggae? Talk to me about the
Yeah,
reggae
so
music.
it's West African music, right? So I fell in love with Afro beats before Afro beats was Afro beats and it was a thing, because that's what everybody listened to all the time. So Nigerian music, and you know they have their own, of course, Sierra Leone music, which sounds very similar to the Ghanaian and Nigerian music. To say I know the genres, I don't think they have like a specific genre that they have that I got a chance to learn about while being there. But you do have this old folk like kind of music that you hear at their weddings and funerals or get-togethers, right? That is very distinctive. And like one of their main, top artists that is called Emerson, and everybody knows if you wanted to check out Sierra Leone and hear their music, Emerson would be a good example of what
Okay.
their music is, and he's a very culturally aware individual and very proud of the Sierra Leone culture. So he talks about that in his music as well. So you're able to kind of get a feel of what it's like and how he sees it.
All right.
Yeah.
Cost of
Of
living.
of course, reggae music and dancehall did it all the time. Like them love Richie Spice. But and music is a part of like just walking around every day. People are always playing music. Like the whole thing of being
So
obnoxious and too loud, they not even have the concept of it. It's
so
like
that's where I was going. I've been to, a couple other Caribbean islands and a couple places, and the one thing is that we have music going 24/7. You pass through a
yeah,
town. I mean, I can't remember the name of this town that when you leave St. Mary and you're coming back to Ocho Rios, and they say, listen, them have the most sound systems there. You
mm,
know, I mean, it's just a vibe
the vibe.
that
Yeah,
that makes you feel alive.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know how to explain it, but it's
And
just
they
a
love to, like Sabi enjoy.
what?
So, I said then Sabi enjoy. Then Sabi
Uh-huh.
enjoy. Then Sabi enjoy means they like to enjoy themselves, right?
Okay,
So yeah, but like when I was there and it's prime, and I don't know if that's changed since of course coronavirus has shifted things a bit. But partying is like a big part of their everybody loves to have a good time,
all
so
right,
and there's not a lot of places, and I would say rivaling Jamaica for nightlife, for just having a good time, is
right.
some of the best times I've had ever going out anywhere in the world. It's just fun, because it's an all night thing. They'll start and they'll run through the night. They'll start at like one spot and they go to the next spot and the next spot. And you'll go to this, others, there's a spot they used to have called the Office. And you talk to anybody that was in Sierra Leone before that place closed, and they'll tell you that that was epic. I mean, you'd have nights where the guy that used to run the place would shut off all the lights. Like you don't get to the office until like 3 in the morning. And when you get there, it's like late because it's open until the sun come up, and you shut off all the lights, and everybody already them, under them liquor and dancing and stuff, and then all you hear is just drums, and you hear the
Wow.
drums, and the guys are beating the drums going through the place, and it's just pitch black, and it's just and the beat, and you're in that moment at the time. Oh my goodness,
Epic.
really on sweet. Salon. Salon. And Sierra Leone is called Sierra Leone Salon. You'll hear them
Alone.
they call it Salon. Salone.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. Salon Suites.
So cost of living. What is the
Mm.
cost of living like there?
So that's changed a lot, Xavier, and that's probably one of the toughest parts to talk about. um, you know, the exchange rate right now is about 20,000 leones to $1. And to kind of put that in, you know, perspective, um, when I was doing business there as of 2015-16, it was about um, 5,000 to 1.
Wow.
Okay. So, and during, since coronavirus, it's, it was about hovering about 10,000 to 1, and then it went up. So cost of
Mm,
living there is relatively, it's cheap. Things are cheap by our standards. Like, you know, our money will go a long way. But for the Sierra Leonean living there, as I mentioned earlier, you have the haves and the have-nots. And so, Sierra Leone is a poor country, um, from a um, economic development perspective. However, it's one of the richest countries probably in the entire world. The joke that people make is that when God gave the angels all of the, minerals and precious metals to distribute, they tripped on Sierra Leone and spilled it there. It's literally one of the richest countries as it pertains to diamonds and iron ore and coltan. I mined coltan and exported coltan from Sierra Leone, and diamonds and gold. So, and it's abounding in opportunity for agriculture and everything like that. But the people are poor. Um,
mm,
and what you find is a lot of external investment is happening in the country. And of course, the Chinese are there. And I am a proponent of some degree of the Chinese and what they're doing in Africa. But I also have very strong feelings about the way that it's happening, because they are the reason that I'm no longer doing business in Sierra Leone, because they
mm.
basically came and cut me out of my mines because they were being funded by their Chinese government that could do that. So you couldn't compete when the mines I used to export and sell to in Sierra Leone, in China, became the miners in Sierra Leone. So how can you now compete with those situations? And so things like that have happened and have affected a lot of people, a lot of my, entrepreneur friends in Sierra Leone. So the people there, there's opportunity abounding, and but cost of living is very
Excellent.
high at the moment, and people are definitely feeling the pinch, and especially they didn't have a bailout plan
Right,
like
right,
many of these
right.
other Western nations. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Customs. Did you, I'm sure you encountered many
Mm,
customs, but
yes.
there one that stood out to you that you found very interesting.
Um.
And it could be anything from, okay, this is the way you're greeted in the morning, or this
mm,
is what happens at a wedding in Sierra Leone, or this
right.
is, this is how you do business. You have to, you know, you know, you know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the things that I will talk about that could be controversial is so how you group
I don't
somebody.
want to get you in no trouble now,
No, don't get me. Good
Listen,
say,
we want to make sure that you can when
but
you go
I
back,
can continue.
you can continue, because I know you have some bit some you and I spoke, and I know you have some business ventures that you're looking back to get back
Yeah.
into there. So I don't want to get you in
No,
trouble.
no, no, no problem, man. So no. So how you greet somebody in Sierra Leone is kushe, kushe,
Okay.
howdy, buddy. And that's kind of like the greeting that everybody uses. What I would say is one of the unique things about Sierra Leone that I thought was very interesting. In the rest of the world, when you talk about Muslims and Christians, you get a very polarizing. It's a very polarizing conversation, and it's one of the few places that I've ever been where I see extreme religious tolerance, right? Even though the country is, predominantly Muslim, you'll find literally where a Christian church may operate inside of an area where there is a Muslim gathering at times. On
Mm,
Fridays, the country, recognizes, of course, prayers. Um, but I would say that that is one of the very unique things I see about Sierra Leone that I haven't seen anywhere else, is the tolerance, the religious tolerance. Another thing I noticed about the people is um, they abhor violence, right? So you will find that they'll argue and shout and cuss and do all of that, but hurting somebody physically will get you in trouble. Right? It's one of
Mm,
those places, and I think that is a result of the extreme environment that they encountered because of the Civil War that they don't want to have again.
okay.
Right?
Okay.
And they don't want to. I think they're so afraid of that. They saw so much pain and loss from that. I mean, I had guys that used to work for me that I would sit down and talk to. There's this one guy told me about how he escaped from the house that was set on fire, and they had tied him up and he had to run away, and his family got burnt. Still
Mm,
see the burn scars on his body.
mm,
And so, people have those memories, so they don't want to go back to that. So that's, tolerance is one of the things I would say in Sierra Leone. It's one of the, few places I feel very safe. Um, they'll tea from you, because poverty, people are trying to con you, but it's not in the violent way where you have to worry about somebody gonna take your life, because it's more like you give somebody $50 to go do something and then they bring you back less than they're supposed to, but that's just part of the nature.
all
And
right. All right. So, if there was a place, an event, or an attraction, something that you say, if you visit Sierra Leone, Xavier,
oh
you
man,
must do this,
the
or you
place is
must go
so
visit, or you must go
beautiful.
visit this. What would
Okay,
that be?
so the peninsula. If you go to Sierra Leone, you must go around the peninsula and go to number 2 beach and Toke Beach. It's one of the most beautiful beaches you've ever seen. It rivals any of the beaches that we have in Jamaica.
No, man,
One
you
of
get
the
in trouble, you know.
no man, no, dead serious. Hold on. So there's this I'll describe it to you and I'll show the picture. But there is this beach called number 2 where there's a mountain behind it, a river that comes out, and the river meets the ocean. And there's white sand beaches, palm trees. When you look out, all you see is clear blue ocean, and behind you is the mountain and the river. And then, so as the tide rises, the river, the ocean, it recedes and comes back and joins together with the ocean. And it's just an absolutely beautiful scene. It's where I spent, and people still do it. It's like a pastime on Sundays. That's where people go on Sundays and they'll relax and they'll sit and chill and bring their families and bring food and relax on the beach. I would say if you go anywhere, to absolutely go around the peninsula, Toke and number 2.
All right,
Yeah.
definitely number 2. The number 2. It sounds like I'm almost saying the number 2 beach in the world.
Yes.
So, winding down, and Charles, I thank you again for spending some time telling us about your experience, in
Mhm.
Sierra Leone. Question for you. So, you land in Jamaica,
Mhm.
you get off the plane,
Mhm.
and I know you visit Jamaica quite often. So,
Mhm.
what's that first thing that you're doing, or you're going to get to eat, or that first activity? What you doing?
Oh, first stop is at Tasties. It's just a tradition. Every time I land, that there's a Tasties right there, the roundabout. Um, and I stop there and I get my Tasties and head to my destination wherever it is. That's my routine.
All right.
Yes.
So, last one.
Mm.
In Sierra Leone, what is the tip? We Jamaicans say, boy, a little more ketchup on the strong,
Yeah, man.
later,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yama, whatever. When we're departing, we have an expression we use, an
Mm-hmm.
informal expression. What is that informal expression that Sierra Leoneans use?
I think it's just it's goodbye. It's not really anything. They don't have like a specific one that's unique to them that I can think of right now. No, there is none that I no. The greeting is unique. The outer body is definitely unique.
Wait,
And
wait. Let me try. Audi body.
outer body,
Audi body.
outer body,
Audi body.
ow
Ow.
the
D.
body,
Audi body.
outer body. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Please,
Thank you.
please, folks from Sierra Leone, don't kill me in the comments. I'm trying. I'm trying.
Uh,
You know? So,
and they'll probably still even make fun of me. Um, but yeah,
but are they? So is are we Jamaicans are brutal.
yeah, man.
You know?
Oh yes.
Are the people from Sierra Leone brutal that way? Or they're chill?
No, if you're trying, your close friends will tell you don't try because you sound funny. But if you're trying, they'll encourage you and they'll help you and they'll teach you and they'll tell you how to say it properly. And if because I went through that whole experience and they were very helpful.
Nice, nice. Charles, thank you again. Any final thoughts? Any closing words?
No, I just tell people, visit the country. I try to, encourage people to go and invest there. There are tons of opportunities there. And cultural tourism is a big thing. I think if you want to also, there are people I want to connect with their ancestry and their roots. They may have done 23andMe or their ancestry.com and they want to find out. I encourage you to go and visit. Check it out. There's lots of places to stay with Western accommodations, if that's what you're thinking about. And of course, tons of things to do. You can go to the old slave fortresses. You can go around to the beaches. There are tons of things. So I just encourage everybody to visit Sierra Leone if you have a chance and, bring some of your...
Putting it on there, putting it on the list.
put
So,
on-
before you go, I know there's a lot of stuff you do, with art, whatever.
Mhm.
Give us a website again. We can continue, check up on the things you're doing.
Yeah, so as it says, tons of stuff. But if you want to check out the art, you can go to markphi.creations.com. That's MARKPHI creations.com. And if you want to learn a little bit about what I'm doing in Sierra Leone and some of the things opportunities, you can also check out decodinglegacy.com. That's decodinglegacy.com.
All right. Charles, thanks again, my friend. And I don't know, I'm going to use a Jamaican little more because since it didn't have one from Sierra Leone, let's use a little more. All right, my friend, little more.
All right, then, brother. Take care.
Show us some love now. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss a video.